All engines available for the BMW X5 can be counted on the fingers of one hand. We will not dwell on them in great detail, because we've already sorted out literally all of them. BMW X5 3.0D, M57 183 horsepower. BMW X5 3.0D, M57N 218 horsepower. The most common, desirable and rational engine for the BMW X5 is the M57 inline turbodiesel 6 and its more powerful restyled version M57N. These are excellent and very durable engines. But this statement should not be understood as permission for completely negligent treatment. Just maintain, change oil and filters. Yes, over time you will have to resolve issues with the gaskets of the entire intake tract, change the expensive crankshaft damper pulley and vacuum tubes, deal with antifreeze leakage through a burst T under the intake manifold, and even replace the gasket of the pan that is leaking oil. It is also worth updating the crankcase ventilation system separator, 11,127,799,225, if the intake manifold is filled with oil. And the former power may disappear along with the appearance of errors due to insufficient fuel pressure in the rail due to wear of the booster and main pumps. It is with their help that fuel enters the injection pump. The restyled M57N engine is equipped with a steel exhaust manifold, which bursts and cracks over time. In this case, exhaust gases will seep through the cracks, hiss, and their smell will appear in the cabin. The steel exhaust manifold should be replaced with a cast iron one from the original version of the M57 engine. A new cast iron manifold, 11,627,788,422, will cost $800. Owners usually look for a used manifold. It was also on the M57N engine that swirl flaps appeared for the X5 SUV. And on most engines these butterflies of death have already been removed. There were no more diesel engines on the first generation X5, BMW X5 3.0, M54B 231 horsepower. The base gasoline engine for the BMW X5 is the M54 3-liter inline 6. A good engine, inferior to diesel both in efficiency and dynamics. The crankcase ventilation system of this engine is poorly adapted to frost, especially in combination with short trips. The VKG valve may simply freeze and the motor will squeeze out all the seals. But otherwise the M54 engine has practically no permanent sore spots. The weak points of this engine require attention once every 100,000 kilometers or even less often. We carried out the repair once and then drive for years without problems. Once every few years, be sure to change the cap of the expansion tank, 17,117,639,022, because of which the cooling system pipes swell and even bursts the tank itself. You can choose a cover with the numbers 140. This means that the valve in it releases the pressure when it reaches 1.4 bar. M54 is a good motor and repairable. BMW X5 4.4i V8, M62B 44 286 horsepower, BMW X5 4.6 is V8, M62B 46 347 horsepower. The BMW X5 also had naturally aspirated V8s. Pre-styling cars had the M62 engine. Yes, this engine pulls great, but it takes a lot for pleasure. It requires high-quality oil and qualified service. Many owners saved and sold the car immediately after voicing a preliminary invoice for replacing timing chains, solving problems with vanos and oil leaks from everywhere. All his weaknesses are listed there. Let's add that there are very few BMW X5s with a live V8 left. BMW X5 4.4i V8, N62B 44 320 horsepower, BMW X5 4.8 is V8, N62B 48 360 horsepower. The restyled BMW X5 of the first generation received a new V8 N62. We have not yet done a detailed analysis of it. Note that this is a disappointment engine with an elusile surface of the cylinders. To all the complexity and meticulousness of its maintenance, you need to add a strong burn of oil through the valve stem seals and scuffs in the cylinders. These engines require minor overhauls with replacement of oil control valves, piston rings and chains every 150,000 kilometers. Many N62 engines went through the cylinder block liner. The BMW X5 was equipped with automatic transmissions from GM and ZF. Cars with a 3-liter gasoline engine are equipped with a 5-speed automatic transmission GM5L50. A5 S390R. This transmission is rather weak for the X5 and in most cases does not last more than 250,000 kilometers. The other 5-speed transmissions on this crossover are the ZF5 HP24 units, A5 S440Z, These units are more powerful and cheaper to repair. I would like to say that 300,000 kilometers is not the limit for them. But it all depends on how aggressively the owner operates the X5 with a diesel or V8. After restyling, the diesel engine and V8 received a new partner, 6-speed automatic ZF6 HP26, GA6 HP26D. The transmission is also very durable, but on most cars it shifts gears with kicks. Owners are well aware of the kick when decelerating and downshifting from second to first gear. Then kicks appear during other switchings. They can be mitigated by replacing the transmission fluid, or even better, replacing all solenoids. Of course, this will help if the transmission is not too worn. We have disassemblies for all these machines. The windshield washer fluid reservoir contains two identical pumps for the front and rear window washers. Years of use have not been kind to them. The fittings on the pump housings may crack, after which liquid will leak out of the tank. Also, the pumps themselves, 6712A 362-154, may fail. The original pumps cost $100, but there are decent replacements available for $15. The BMW X5 may experience errors in the ABS system. Often the culprit is a wiring harness that has rubbed against the front left fender liner. There are also cases of failure of the ABS unit itself. If errors are detected on the ABS sensors, and the wiring from them to the connector on the block is intact, then you will have to open the block and solder the contacts in it. But if there are communication errors via the CAN bus with the ABS unit, then you will have to look for a used unit, because in the old one, the electrical circuit board must have started to deteriorate. The BMW X3 air conditioning fan is a weak point. An executive unit is installed on its frame. It is precisely this that fails due to dirt and moisture. It can burn right in a car wash if a stream of water successfully hits it. This unit is seriously damaged and cannot be repaired. The electric motor of the fan is almost eternal. If the unit burns out, you will have to buy a new fan assembly. 64,546,921,381 and 64,546,921,381 for 3.0D, for almost $500 or a used one. There are still many new replacements on sale for up to $300. The main cooling fan of the BMW X5 engines, except for the N62 motor, is equipped with a viscous coupling. It itself blocks the fan impeller together with its pulley when the engine temperature rises. At the same time, a working viscous coupling does not allow the fan to spin up to prohibitive speeds, but if the viscous coupling is constantly tightly blocked, then the fan literally begins to rotate at the speed of the crankshaft. If the speed jumps above 2,500 revolutions per minute, the fan impeller will not hold up and will fly apart in all directions. It happens that the fan blades pierce the hood. In general, the fan should not emit an outrageous howl. There should be no creaking or hum from the clutch. There is also an opinion that backlash in the pump, which is driven by the same belt as the fan, can cause premature wear of the viscous coupling. By the way, radiators and the entire cooling system must be kept completely clean. BMW gasoline engines are very hot and, even with clean radiators, quickly coat the oil. True, it is possible and necessary to install colder thermostats. The M57 diesel engine is also not happy with dirty radiators. Due to overheating, it can pierce the cylinder head gasket and turn the liners. However, this applies to absolutely any motor. On the underside of the BMW X5 there is a completely embarrassing problem. The point is this. The transfer case rests on a cross member, a traverse. It is screwed to the bottom on both sides. On the right side, a crack usually forms in the area of the front cage nut. The crack is directly in the spar, not in the yoke. This crack is treated with a patch that is welded directly onto the spar. Pre-restyling BMW X5s were equipped with permanent all-wheel drive. The transfer case of such cars has a regular center differential. Such transmissions are simple and quite reliable. By the way, the drive to the front axle is transmitted by a chain. Fortunately, the chain lasts a very long time and can be replaced with a reinforced one. Due to corrosion as well as due to shock loads, the splines in the front driveshaft flange may break. The restyled X5 has an X-Drive all-wheel drive system, which connects the drive to the front axle as needed. It is based on the well-known ATC 500 transfer case. One day it will require a rebuild due to chain stretching, wear of the clutch pack, failure of the electric motor and breakdowns of related parts, bearings and drive fork.
For a long service life, change the oil in it every 60,000 kilometers, avoid off-road driving with slipping and immediately go for repairs if, when switching from R to D, A suspicious ringing and hesitation appears when accelerating.
By the way, the dead ATC 500 transfer case can be replaced with the ATC 700, which appeared on the second generation X5. It is more reliable, so demand and prices for it are lower. Both gearboxes on the BMW X5, especially on the version with X-Drive, can jam and fall apart. They are simply exchanged for used ones. They fall apart due to incorrect operation of the clutch. In emergency mode, it remains closed, the four-wheel drive becomes permanent and rigidly connected, so when turning, both gearboxes are heavily loaded. After a powerful crunch followed by jamming, they are simply replaced with used ear ones. The chassis of the first-generation BMW X5 is reminiscent of the significantly strengthened suspension of the E53. At the front there are McPherson struts, traditional for BMWs of those years. I must say that the front suspension serves well, even longer than on the 5. The front suspension arms are made of steel, their original silent blocks are sold separately. The original levers serve well, 150,000 kilometers or more. The cost of the original is unpleasantly surprising, $170 for the rear, and almost $500 for the front. The first one sold here is the silent block of the front lever, but it can be easily replaced separately and costs about $100. His ball will cost the same price. There are a lot of substitutes, the prices are much lower, but the service life also does not reach the original. The original front stabilizer links cost $50 and last a long time, especially if the owner doesn't throw his X5 across the curb in a parking lot. The original support bearings for the front struts are priced at only $30, and they last 200,000 kilometers. This also applies to shock absorbers. Original shock absorbers cost $840 a piece. Replacements are 3 times cheaper. On the restyled BMW X5, the front axle is equipped with air suspension not only for the rear axle, but also for the front axle. Surprisingly, the air struts of this crossover are not capricious and last the same 200,000 kilometers as simple shock absorbers. The cost of original air struts goes over $2,000. There are plenty of offers for replacements, repair kits and repair services. The rear suspension has 3 levers. Everything here is also literally like in the E39. The integral link lower H-arm is cast aluminum but has a very long service life. In general, the entire rear suspension is strong and lasts 200,000 kilometers on original parts. Only the floating silent block, which is installed under the steering knuckle, is sold separately. It costs about $100. All other silent blocks are sold separately only through replacement catalogs. The lower arm assembly costs more than $1,000. So all its silent blocks are simply repressed. The rear upper control arm will cost about $240, and the thin front control arm will cost $400. The first generation BMW X5 only have air suspension on the rear axle. Rear original air springs cost $320. In general, the air suspension of this crossover is reliable, but over the years, leaks appear in the pipelines. Even a non-original air suspension compressor costs about $900, and repair kits are also available. Note that if the X5 has a spring suspension at the rear, then the car can also roll over a little on its side. This occurs due to the destruction of the rubber insulating cones located under the springs. The first generation BMW X5 is well protected from corrosion. External body panels are slowly covered in bugs, and this is most likely if they have previously been damaged in an accident and have been poorly repainted, but you can't relax about corrosion. The spar elements of the bottom along the sills can turn into dust and require overcooking. The steel mudguards behind the lockers can rust through. Therefore, meticulous inspection of the X5 on the lift for corrosion is necessary. Corrosion on subframes should not be ignored. Rust can seriously weaken them. First, the wheel alignment angles will begin to go away and not return, and then they may even burst. When purchasing and using, you need to inspect the lower edges of the doors. The paint here swells due to exposure to reagents and moisture. But the rear door wings require even more attention and, often, repainting. At the top, the metal under the molding with illuminated number plate and button is rusting. The lower part of the sash is rusting. The body and the rear door opening also rusts. Lift the bridge between the trunk threshold and the rear door and look through the opening. Often everything here is red in color and there are hints of holes forming. Moisture easily and naturally kills the electrical components built into the trunk door handle molding. The license plate lights go out precisely because the connectors are oxidized, and the trunk open button stops working. In many cases the button begins to operate spontaneously. There are 4 wires going into this strip, So it's not difficult to restore the wiring or come up with a solution to replace the connectors and Textilite board damaged by corrosion. A new original molding with all the filling costs over $400. There's a life hack: a strip with lampshades, a button and connectors from the BMW X5 E53 is sold separately. The price is $200. It fits perfectly into the place of the standard strip in the X5 molding, but if the trunk lock simply stopped locking the top flap after slamming, then you will have to get to it and replace the broken latch spring. The rear wiper of the first generation BMW X5 is framed and mounted on a steel arm, which rusts over time and the paint on it swells. It can be completely replaced with parts from the second generation BMW X5 E70, 61,627,206,357 for a frameless wiper. This pleasure will cost about $70. There are also many non-original kits on sale with a plastic lever and a frameless rear wiper. 61,627,161,029. BMW X5 headlight lens reflectors become blind with age. To solve the problem, you will have to unstick the headlight and change either the lens assembly or restore the coating on its reflector. Decorative grills and air intakes become fragile over time and burst. Their fragments simply break off. Original grills cost $50, $70. There are non-original ones for half that price. Some BMW X5s were equipped with electric folding mirrors. This system may one day upset you because the car will flap its mirrors like an elephant's ears. The housings will fold and unfold immediately. This occurs due to the breaking off of the end switch plate. After this, the contact does not close, so the mirrors do not stop in their final position. The mirrors are quite easy to disassemble, and you can return the plate to its place and secure it using literally improvised means. A known issue with the BMW X5 is the door handle frame issue. This is an internal bracket on which the handles move and a cable is attached to it. These brackets are made of brittle silumen alloy and have a small loop that breaks. After this, the door handle is unable to unlock the lock. Breakdown occurs in cold weather, after freezing of moisture that gets on the bracket. The original bracket, 51,218,243,615, today costs about $200, but there are many non-original offers that are many times cheaper. To replace the bracket, you will have to remove the entire door trim. Some craftsmen add canopies over the frames to protect them from moisture flowing from above. The door handle bracket can also break if the handle is roughly pulled out. By the way, it is correct to pull the BMW X5 door handles at a slight upward angle, and not strictly horizontally to the side. On the restyled BMW X5 E53, an optional panoramic sunroof with a sliding section was available. Drainage pipes are laid from each corner of this hatch through the roof pillars. If one day you find a puddle on the carpets in the cabin or the headliner gets wet, then first of all inspect the drainage tube in the appropriate place. It may burst, crack, jump off or become clogged with debris. The hatch itself is troublesome, its plastic guides easily break in cold weather. And in the summer the hatch can get stuck in the open position, and even skewed. It is necessary to lubricate the guides preventively. Plastic parts of window regulators, such as guide sliders and glass clamps, do not last forever. If one of the clamps breaks, the glass will ring under the influence of vibrations. A cable may jump out of cracked guides, and then when lowering or raising the glass, it will warp. One day the BMW X5 will light up the 4x4 indicator on the dashboard. This error indicates that the ECU is receiving an incorrect signal from the steering wheel position sensor. The sensor can be revived. It needs to be removed from the steering shaft, carefully opened, the contact tracks cleaned and the contacts sliding along them slightly bent. The pixels on the onboard computer display stop lighting. This problem affects the displays of all BMWs. The whole point is that the contacts in the cable that connects the display disappear. There is a suitable cable on sale that needs to be expertly soldered.